This episode is sponsored by Regret and the trim aisle of my local Lowe's. But in all seriousness, I'll be going over the painting and installation of the trim pieces and the siding that I have for the play structure. Stick around to the end and I'll show you some of the spots I forgot to paint that will haunt me forever. So the design spec'd the color, but didn't say anything about what type of siding to use. That was entirely up to me. I seriously considered three options. First was veneered plywood, the same as what's on the interior. The second was lap siding, so the long horizontal pieces, I've got that on my house. And the third was cedar shingles. I love the look of the cedar shingles. I knew they were going to take a lot more work than the other options, but given the relatively small scale of this project, I just went for it. What I didn't know was just how much work and how long they were going to take. Stick around. After picking the shingles, the next decision was how to paint them, before or after installation. I went with before. I figured it would be cleaner, and I really didn't want teal paint all over the floors and walls. Then came the real decision: do I use brushes or buy a paint sprayer? As you can see, I obviously used brushes, but in hindsight, I probably should have just bit the bullet and bought the sprayer. It just took so much time to get everything done. 2 coats per shingle, limited drying space, basically just a 4x8 sheet of plywood on sawhorses. The other big issue was the weather. I started outside, which worked great for drying, but as it got colder and wetter in the winter, I had to move into the garage. The drying times got longer and longer until I could really only get 1 coat done per day. When I bought the shingles, I thought I'd finish painting in a week, maybe 2. I was completely wrong. It took about 2 months from start to finish. We're now doing the trim work for the exterior of the Playhouse, so let's get started with some cutting. There were just a few pieces of trim I needed for this project. All the edges, the exterior and interior corners, bottoms by the floor, tops by the ceiling, casings for the window and door. More pieces than I initially expected, honestly, once I started mapping it all out. Everything was built out of 1x material, a mix of 1x2, 1x4, 1x6, just generic softwood from Lowe's, nothing fancy, but it gets the job done and it was easy to work with. Then I had some quarter round molding for the inside corners, painted all of it marine blue. For the 1x pieces, I used a hand plane to put a slight bevel on the edges, just making sure the corners weren't sharp, little kids and all that. It's a small detail, but it makes a big difference in how the finished product feels. Now, take a guess, just how many trips to Lowe's it took to get all those pieces of trim. Put your guess in the comments below, and I'll let you know in a little bit. I had a rough idea of the sizes for all these pieces from the design dimensions. I was able to rough cut everything, got close, but for the final cuts, I had to measure, do some dry fitting, make sure everything worked, and if it didn't, cut it again. It's one of those processes that sounds simple, but it just eats a lot of time. Tedious, not terrible, just tedious. Pretty much all the cuts for this were pretty straightforward, just 90-degree butt joints on the miter saw. I didn't bother doing miter joints or anything like that. The part that took most of the time was cutting around the crown molding and the baseboards already in place. I think it's actually called coping. Just trying to get a nice flush fit against them. That was a lot of tracing, cutting test pieces, making adjustments, then finally cutting the real piece. It was just a ton of back and forth to get those to look nice. It turns out that rough cut actually worked very well. Glad I didn't take off more space. Not too surprising. I know there was a little bit of a gap overall height-wise for the board, so I wasn't having to jam into the floor or the ceiling, and leaving this amount of tolerance seemed to work pretty well. I went ahead and transferred measurements for the piece of the Playhouse that's next to the climbing board. Just held this up against the climbing board, used another piece of wood to mark sort of where the depth was and the height that I needed. So I've got about 1 1/8 inch here that's exposed, that'll stay. And this is my height from the floor for what needs to stay. And the rest of all this will get cut off. Alright, so you stuck around. Despite my best attempts at planning, I had to make 8 trips to Lowe's just for the trim. I'm just reusing a piece that's already cut as my template. There we go. Similar to the shingles, I did 2 coats of paint on all the trim pieces. I ended up doing a mix of painting before and after installation. I'd like to say I had some fancy system for deciding this, but honestly, a lot of the times I just got excited to install pieces and I completely forgot to paint them before it was too late, so I had to be careful. At this point in the project, I was really starting to drag. I was probably 5 months in, and it was hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but this part actually felt really good, finally getting those first trim pieces up in the wall. So I realized that I forgot to record installing any of the trims or window casing, door casing, which is fine, as my channel name suggests. I didn't actually end up doing it right. I now realize I should have had these parts floating off of the framing using some shims, and then used a trim piece that came out and covered over this. Oh well, it's my first time doing this. It's a Playhouse. I'll learn. But looks good enough for what it is. And then for here, I haven't attached these yet. I'm undecided if I want to have a threshold down here with that piece. Obviously that would mean these have to get shorter. Or if I'll just have the carpet tiles coming straight to the edge here. I ended up buying 4 bundles of cedar shingles for the project. This should be about enough to cover 100 square feet with a 5-inch reveal. That's just how much of the bottom of the shingle is exposed when you've got them layered during installation. I accidentally stopped the recording, so you missed some of the progress on this. I'm about to put in the first of the climbing rungs. So the first attempt isn't going to work here. Climbing hold is meant to be mounted around here, but I didn't necessarily want to have it right at the edge of the shingle. I was afraid it was going to crack. So I put the holes down a little bit. I thought I might have stud going up and down here. I don't. I must just have blocking going side to side. So this isn't going to work right here. I have to take these 2 out and this one so I can replace this because it's got the holes, and then figure out something for mounting up higher here. Remember, folks, don't forget to cut twice and measure once. I'm just using this to protect the siding that's showing. I did a pretty good job of making sure everything was painted correctly before the installation. The front, the bottom, the sides of the shingles. There were a couple of spots where I was cutting pieces to fit and I forgot to paint the edge that I had cut, but I was able to just touch those up with a small brush directly on the wall, not a big deal. I mostly remembered to paint the spots behind the gaps between shingles on the higher rows, but I think there were a few spots I missed, like near the bottom of the structure. It's visible, but it's not too bad. I ended up with a handful of shingles left over, perfect for any repairs down the road. I didn't film a cutting of this because I didn't think it would end up working, but this actually fits pretty well. It is time to attach these pieces of trim so that I can continue doing the siding and have it butt up against the bottom of that trim piece. Using a 15 gauge nailer for this, just people will be walking on these, so I want a little bit more holding power than I had with the 16 gauge on these pieces of trim here. Made another piece to fit on this side. And I still have to do a piece for the vertical part over there, but I'll get to that later. It'll be a little bit of hammering to get everything in place where I want it to sit. Wood is a little bit warped here. I think I've got a jam. There we go. I'm now at the point where I have to cut these shingles down a little bit to be able to fit here. Got about 12 and 7/8, so I'm just going to select a couple of pieces, not a couple, a row of pieces to fill this out. Well, I thought I just did a nice montage of me cutting all these pieces, but I forgot to hit record. And unfortunately, it looks like my laser died. So we'll get right back to you after I charge that. Alrighty, we're good to go. Laser level is charged up again. Just finished painting some more siding pieces. Let's do this. This time we're going to get a cut and measure montage. Here we go. So this should pretty much just butt up against that. That didn't work. What about for here? Top of this isn't level. Just cut all those for nothing. Nope, can't use the nailer on this. I gotta use the pinhole nailer because that's gonna be visible. I don't even think I have pinhole nails. Got the nailer, not the nails. I had a bit of a mixed blessing with this being an interior build. I didn't have to be concerned about weather, waterproofing, the water getting into the structure, rotting something out. Made installation a bit simpler. The downside was that it was a small-ish project, so I wasn't really able to get into a great rhythm, nailing in long rows of the shingles. Everything was just kind of start and stop. Lots of edges, lots of pieces around the windows frames and the door. Just a lot of custom fitting and cutting. This definitely followed the 80-20 rules. Those custom pieces took at least 80% of the effort and time. It looks great, glad I did it, but it was a lot of work. I already had a good enough tool for this part of the project, just an 18 gauge crown stapler. Resisted the temptation to buy a new one from Metabo that was on sale during the holidays, but the same can't be said for 4 other nail guns that I bought. I'll do a brief rundown of those later in the video, but compared to the paint sprayer decision, I actually have future projects in mind to justify the purchase of these tools. Normally when you're installing cedar shingles on the outside of a house, you've got to put a lot more effort into your starter rows to make sure you've got the right overlap, keeps water out. Obviously I didn't have to worry about that, so I just started putting them on. Unsurprisingly, the floor wasn't perfectly level, so the reveal on that first row varies a little bit, but it's not really visible. After you've got that first row in place, the thing to focus on is keeping the bottom of each next row level. I used a horizontal laser for this, just set it up, move the line to my 5-inch mark, and butt the bottom of the next row on that laser line. After you finish one row, you just lift the laser up 5 inches or so, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. It just depended what a transition around a door frame or window frame might have been like, and if it looked awkward if I didn't adjust it. For this piece of trim, I used a scribe to get the curve to match the ceiling. Worked out pretty well, as you can see. Just gonna get nailed in place and I can finish up the siding on the front here. So here I'm going to start taking my cuts from this part instead of up here, or else I'm going to end up stacking up too much material right here at the top by the trim, and then by the time I get to that last row, I'm going to run the issue of the top of the shingle or the face of the shingle sticking out past this piece of trim, which I don't want to have. So I'm finally getting back to this project after kids being out of school for 2 weeks for the holidays. And I'm testing out a Christmas present that I got. It's the IsoTunes something 2.0. But looking forward to being able to use some hearing protection that I can still listen to music and not deal with copyright issues. Let's get to it. There we go. That's this wall done. And I get a sneak peek at my setup to get the laser level high enough to reach the top of the building. Ta-da! This part felt really good to finally get to. It was definitely the final stretch for the biggest push on this project. Real time, this is about 3.5 hours. Finally done with the shingles. I want to say that's it for this exterior trim work. I'm going to be moving on to doing the carpeting. So this is the haul of nail guns I picked up while working on this project. Everything's Metabo, no rhyme or reason to that. Lowe's was just having a lot of really good sales on them during the holidays last year. So I got a 15 gauge nailer, a 16 gauge nailer, 18 gauge brad nailer, and a 23 gauge pin nailer. When tools are that cheap, you don't really have a choice. It's just guy math. You gotta buy them. 2 months, 8 trips to Lowe's, 4 nail guns, a lot of paint. Here it is. Hey there, thanks for watching all the way through. Next episode's the last in this build series. You'll see me doing the finishing touches on this project, putting in some carpet tiles, this railing next to me. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you've liked the video, please hit that like button. It means a lot to the channel. Thanks. Bye. So I don't think it's possible to see this on camera, but between these shingles, I forgot to put a layer of paint down before I put them up. Shh. No one will ever know.